if I could be the best actor in the world, but I had to kill a clone of myself every time I did a role, I would do that. And welcome back to another episode of Exposing Ourselves with Travis and Matt. I am Travis Ritchie, and with me is my good buddy,
Matt Runquist. Hey there. Exposing Ourselves is the show where we expose each other to the things that we love. Damn it. I'm supposed to do you first, aren't I? God damn it.
Yeah, I mean, that's just polite.
Travis is a big movie buff, and he's going to show me all the movies that he loves, one at a time, hopefully. And I love music, and I want to show Travis those bands and individuals that really get me going.
One at a time. Wouldn't it be interesting, though, if we could just matrix this thing and upload,
It would be pretty fantastic. Today's 9 episodes.
Wouldn't it be also awesome? Wouldn't it be awful if you had never seen The Matrix and didn't understand that reference?
No, I definitely saw The Matrix in Minneapolis
Good.
when we were at school. So
yeah, man, I remember when that came out. It was just, it blew everybody's minds.
do you remember how bad the previews were for that?
No, in fact, no, I remember the opposite. I remember the previews being so amazing that I assumed that they showed every good part possible in the trailer.
I thought that the previews made it look really cheesy.
Really?
Yeah, I did not like the previews at all, and my expectations were very low going into it. And so to get a deep philosophical action movie with groundbreaking special effects was not at all what I was expecting when I walked in the theater that day. I expected to spend my $8 and eat my bucket of popcorn and kill 2 hours. That's all I expected.
Interesting. I kind of thought the opposite, so that I was psyched, but I also just assumed that we saw all the best bits in the trailer and there couldn't be anything more to it, and it ended up being so much more. And even though there were awesome bits in the trailer, so that's interesting. But have you seen the sequels?
I have seen the sequels, and I think I'm in the minority here in that I liked them. I have not seen the modern.
Really?
I have not seen the modern one, but
Okay.
I liked 2 and 3 quite a bit. I loved the Animatrix, obviously.
Oh,
I
the
think
Animatrix
everybody
was
loves
great.
the Animatrix, but
Yeah, they really are good. Not enough people have seen them, I think. But I did not particularly like the sequels. It felt to me like they were pretty much a money grab. Like, let's make these because we need to make money. Although the newest one kind of lies somewhere between for me. Like I think
between
it
the
was
original and the original sequels,
yes,
like it's
exactly.
better than the original sequels, but not as good as the.
Correct. Yeah, yeah. It's interesting, and I think they do an interesting job with reinventing that world in order to revisit it in the context of 20 years later in our world. So I thought they did a pretty good job with that. So I have been house sitting here in Ojai, or just outside Ojai, California.
Ojai!
And I'm gonna by the time we listen to this, we will. I don't know if we want to date these recordings at all, but it's Christmas pretty much. It's Christmas Eve today.
It is Christmas
And so by the time our listeners listen to it, it will be later. And of course, time means nothing on the internet, so it could be quite a bit later. But here
It could be next Christmas.
It could be.
Think positive,
Could be.
Travis.
In which case, Merry Christmas.
Merry
or,
Christmas.
It could be any other holiday. Is there an opposite holiday to Christmas? Halloween, I suppose. It could be
July
you could be listening
4th.
to
I
this.
think July 4th is awfully close.
Yeah, I mean, it's opposite in terms of the year. In
Well,
fact, my birthday.
I'm a scientist, right? So I immediately
was
went
more
to the
meaning,
opposite
like,
part of the year. But you mean like opposite?
The
well,
opposite
right.
spirit.
So Nightmare Before Christmas classically perfectly melds Halloween and Christmas.
Yeah.
Or
so
as
Halloween
perfectly as you're
being-
going to get.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
yeah, they are
so
pretty
if you're
opposite.
listening to this on Halloween, then happy All Saints Day. And
Or if you're
don't
Tim
know.
Burton.
Or if you're Tim Burton, put me in a movie, man. It's about time.
Yeah.
I have been languishing too long in the annals of Hollywood, and it's time for me to make my mark in a Tim Burton movie.
Excellent.
Yeah. So we had anything else going on for you this week?
I'm spending a quiet Christmas at home. We're dog sitting for a friend, but other than that, it's been pretty relaxed. Yeah, trying to avoid
guys have
pulling
a,
the car. Oh, it's very, very cold here in Wisconsin.
Cold.
I don't know if you've
Yeah,
heard
that's
that.
what I've heard.
Negative 30 wind chill sort of thing.
Oof.
So
My goodness.
yeah, it's very much a why do we live here type of situation right now.
It is not that here. Like, I feel like it's sucking the cold from our part of the world because for us, today and tomorrow are actually pretty warm days for this time of year. So it's going to be highs in the 70s, mid 70s. And so I'm going to go for, I meant to go for a hike today, but I'm going to go on a Christmas hike tomorrow to see if I can go somewhere in the area.
Yeah, we're supposed to get a warm front Wednesday, and it'll be in the mid 40s, which, as I think you know, is pretty warm for here in mid-December.
Yeah, I don't miss Midwest winters at all, sir. Which is why you were one of only two people who offered me a room to stay when I got sent home early from Japan.
Yes.
And that was, although I would have loved to lived with you for a while during the pandemic, the reason I didn't is because I didn't want to deal with a Midwest winter. Because even though it was September at the time, I saw winter coming, and I didn't want to deal with it.
I'm glad to know it wasn't my personality.
Oh, not at all. I would have absolutely. Oh, I think it would have just been insanely fun to live with you for several months in the midst of lockdown.
Yeah.
But anyway, so this week's episode we have a little bit of a different theme than we've been going. It's certainly a different movie for me than my normal vibe. Generally, I like movies that are genre in some way. If it's got superheroes or spaceships or dragons, then a movie has a much better chance with me, and I will be even forgiving of it. Now, it's not to say I don't only like those kind of movies, and this week's movie is kind of indicative of that. And I was inspired to choose it based on your music selection. Mm-hmm. So, do you want to talk about that first?
Sure. We can talk about the music first. So, I honestly don't know what got me to choose this other than it's an album that I really love. I chose Boys and Girls by Alabama Shakes. Debut album from, I believe they're a quartet, friends in college that made a really, really fantastic album kind of out of nowhere.
Interesting. I didn't know this was the debut album.
Yeah. And I would call it roots rock. I think that they don't really like that description, but I don't know what else to call it if not roots. So,
I mean, it feels to me, the vibe I was getting was kind of like soul rock, like like kind of Aretha Franklin, Tina Turner, those kind of things.
Yeah, it's a very old sounding album. Like it came out in 2012, but it could have easily have come out 40 years earlier.
Interesting. Okay. Well, I put it on, and I listened to it twice all the way through, and I will say up front that it's not really my bag. It's not something that I would probably listen to, but that's probably only because I don't listen to music in the background, So, and this struck me as the perfect kind of album to have on in the background on a Sunday, like just kind of playing in the house, like my mom used to play Mozart or classical music on a Sunday. I could definitely see this in that type of context. It didn't grab me. Like, I think that it was competent. It was fine. Mm-hmm. It wasn't... I didn't dislike it at all. It just... I think my only the way I can explain it is that when I was listening to it, I kind of didn't have an idea of how many songs I'd listened to.
Sure, it's a very even album. There's a lot of guitar work that, while very technically difficult, is not super differentiated, and it is an album that I think really does reward repeat listening, which is something we've discussed in earlier episodes. And you're doing your best, but I mean, one can only listen to the same album that you don't know so many times over the course of a week or less.
Which and I do make a point to listen to it at least twice through, and I think with this one it ended up being like twice and a half, because the first time I went through and I think I got 3 or 4 songs in, and then either reached the end of my walk or got distracted by something, and so my next walk I listened to it twice through, and again, there would be this moment where I'd be like, this song doesn't feel like it's from this album, and I'd look and my YouTube music, like whatever, had kept playing related songs. But
let me ask you about the first song, Hold On. So Hold On is a really clearly very heartfelt song. The lyric, I didn't think I'd make it to 22 years old, is obviously a powerful one.
I caught that on the second time through.
And that song is, to me, like, it was the first single that I heard, and it's the one that got me to buy the album. So I'm curious if you feel like that one does just sort of fit in with the rest of the album, or if it kind of stands out.
I didn't feel like it stood out, but only because like I said, the entire album was fine, but it felt similar. Like I kind of felt my brain turning off a little bit to the music, because it was just kind of that very calm, good singing, but not spectacular. Like I couldn't get grabbed by it, but it wasn't trying to grab me. It was trying to almost like caress my brain a little bit,
Yeah.
I wish there had been a little more variety within the album.
Sure.
Where, like in the last playlist you sent me, each song was different and interesting. In this one, they were all kind of that same feel.
Yeah, it's funny, right? The only song to me that like really stands out as like kind of wildly different from the rest of it is Heavy Chevy, which is the last track on the playlist and it's a bonus track for the album. Although every version of the album that I've ever heard has had that track on it. It must have been like it was not on the vinyl or something. But I do think that that's kind of funny that it is a very even album, and then the one song that's like, oh, that's a little different. Turns out it's a bonus track.
This is a little rockin'.
Yeah, I would say that song is more rockabilly. Are you familiar with like Reverend Horton Heat or that sort of Brian Setzer? Maybe you might be a Brian Setzer guy.
I know Brian Setzer.
Yeah,
but, I think
Stray Cats, that sort of.
The comparison I kept making in my mind was Tina Turner,
sure,
especially in those old days. And for that one, I was thinking, Nutbush City Limits type, but not even that fun.
Yeah, so, I wouldn't say that Boys and Girls is an overly fun album for sure. If you do get into the lyrics, most of it's pretty heavy. A lot of heartache and struggle for what are pretty young people.
Sure. And that is another interesting note that's similar to what we had last week, where I did catch more of the lyrics, especially on my second time through, but the singing wasn't of a type where it was easy to understand what was being said. And it's interesting because that brought to mind the problem that I had with a movie recently, which was the Mary Poppins sequel, right? When I watched that, I couldn't understand any of the words to any of the songs. And so I remember watching it going, not only do I not remember any of the melodies, they were also forgettable, but I couldn't pick out any of the words to the songs. I mean, not any, but maybe 25%. And so I was like, is that the same problem? Did I have that problem in the first movie? And was the first movie even really as good as I remembered it? And so I went back and watched the first movie almost immediately, and it was perfect. The first Mary Poppins movie is brilliant, and all the lyrics are audible. All the melodies are distinct and memorable. And so what is it about movies and music and music in movies these days that is this kind of dilemma that I'm having, where for this album, I can't really understand the words the first time through.
Yeah, I don't know.
Or even the second time through.
Yeah. It's I do think it is sort of the way music is produced these days. It could very well have to do with the high levels of compression that they use. I don't know if you've ever sort of delved into the audio engineering side of things, but if you look at so what compression does is it brings the quiet parts louder and the louder parts quieter to make the whole thing more even. It has the effect of making kind of everything sound even dynamically. And I think it might be why you're losing the vocals, is because the vocals get pushed into this musical mix that's all at the same level, and it doesn't stand out from the music as much.
I mean, that's so fascinating. But we've been dealing with compression for since 20 years now. So why is it still an issue that we can't fix?
Well, I mean, audio mixing is a dark art, right? And I mean, there are certainly I forget the name of the dude who's sort of famous for these really, really super quiet things and then crazily loud action stuff. It's the Batman guy, though. Christopher Nolan.
Okay, Christopher Nolan. Sure.
Where it's like whisper, 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 right? There's sorry about that, everyone.
Yeah.
But
and that was the thing with him in the movie that he did last year, Tenet.
Yeah.
Where you just couldn't understand.
Yeah.
Half the dialogue, and it was so maddening. But that's not something that he does all the time either. That was a choice for that movie, and they have to know, what is it like?
Yeah,
I don't think that that's okay.
Yeah, and it's funny, right? Because it might be mixed in a way that allows you to hear it in a quiet Dolby Theater or I don't even know what the standard is these days, but a quiet theater that you would never be able to hear in your house. So, anyways, yeah. Okay. So this one of the things that I have wanted to make sure that I do with this music thing is not just be like, oh, I'm going to bowl right down the middle and give Travis a bunch of things that I know he's going to like. I'm going to expose him to some things that I like and he might not, but I think I'm glad that you listened to it. I'm glad that you took a chance on it.
And it, like I said, it wasn't. I didn't dislike it. I didn't love it, and it's exactly the kind of thing I would put on in the background on a Sunday morning or afternoon, just to kind of have it on.
All right, cool. Okay, are we doing ratings? Should we do a rating?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, give it a rating.
I would say I'd give it. I think I'd put right down the middle of the road. Give it a 5 out of 10.
Give it a 5. And remind us what you gave Ghost last week. Was that a 7?
I think that was a 7.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Cool.
Yeah. So my choice for you was inspired by the Southern sensibilities of this album, and I decided to assign you, and I mean thus myself again, because we each have been rewatching the things that we assign or re-listening, I think, and so I assigned you the movie The Help, which came out, I believe, in 2011, and was based on a book and it came out from Disney as a production company, which was an interesting thing to see. But it has a star-studded cast, and I don't think anybody won an Oscar for this movie, but there are 7.
I thought Octavia maybe. I
I
thought
don't-
somebody did.
I don't think she won for this. I think she won for Hidden Figures, if I'm not mistaken. But there are 7 Oscar winners in this movie, including Octavia Spencer and Viola Davis and Emma Stone and
Octavia did win for supporting in this. Yeah.
in this.
She was the only one to win in this. Jessica Chastain was also nominated for supporting.
Oh,
Viola
she was
Davis
great.
for Best Actress and
Got it.
nominee for Best Picture.
I should probably have brought up the page for it before we started, but yeah, really incredible cast and great performances, and an incredible cast of female actresses rather than powerhouse men. The men were inconsequential kind of to this whole movie.
Yes.
But what did you think? So tell me what you. I mean, I suppose, do we need to talk about what The Help is about?
Sure, we can talk about what The Help is about.
Because I guess it's not. I mean, it probably is not a hugely maybe successful movie.
Oh,
I don't even know
think
how
it
much.
is. Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah, I guess
it's
it
pretty
made
big.
$216 million in the box office
Which
on a
is
budget of $25
more,
million.
that's like a cup of coffee, maybe 2 cups of coffee. I mean, it's a little bit of money.
Yeah.
So The Help is, I believe it's an alternate history, right? Like the
Nope.
book,
Well,
the book
I
The
don't
Help
think
is
it's
not a real book. I mean, the book that the movie is based on is a real book, but there's not a journalist from the 1960s who wrote a book called The Help.
okay. Yes. So it's
Okay.
it's a fictionalized telling of real events. So it's not based on real people.
It's set in Jackson, Mississippi in 1963, I believe. And
Right.
it tells the story of the children of a certain class of person in Jackson, Mississippi, and the black women who raised them.
Yeah. Good.
So, as you probably know, this movie is fairly controversial.
Yeah.
Viola Davis has since kind of thrown the movie under the bus. And, I would say not without cause, right? The original book is written by a white author. The screenwriter is white. The director is white. The whole story revolves around the white character. I don't know that I would necessarily call Emma Stone's character a white savior, but there's definitely echoes of like more racist movies that are sort of like it's like somebody heard all the criticisms about the stories that were being told about black people and was like, yeah, okay, I'll try to incorporate, that those criticisms, but like there is just part of you that goes, it's 2012, maybe this isn't like a white director and a white person's story to tell anymore, right? Like, and it's so before we dive too deep into that, I want to say I did like the movie, right? It's obvious. I don't think you could direct these people badly. Like I don't think even George Lucas could make these people stiff and terrible. But I that is sort of hanging over it all the time. That knowledge that Viola Davis later decided she was uncomfortable with the plot, and looking at the criticisms that she has of it, they're pretty valid.
Yeah, I mean, and it's hard for us to talk about it as white guys, but especially on that aspect of it. Yeah. But the thing that I would say as a creator myself is that this doesn't seem to me to be a story that it's not trying to be the story of those people, of the help of the maids themselves. It's about that, but it seems to be the white women's stories. You know, it's from their perspective.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And so,
it's from it is absolutely from their perspective, and so I guess the question that probably Viola Davis was asking is do we need the story from their perspective? Maybe, right?
Well, and I think that's an important thing too. But I think that can be a gateway to hearing these stories for people who otherwise wouldn't be maybe open to it. Like, you know, are people who wouldn't go see, I don't know, Selma, for example, if it's because it's written by a black person, directed by a black person, and it's about black people. It's, maybe there are people who wouldn't see that movie.
Right.
Whereas this maybe is a little more accessible. I don't know.
Absolutely.
But I think it's also it like. I bristle a little bit at this backlash we have against this instinct that we have to automatically assign a white savior movie as problematic.
Right.
And I think that I don't think that there's necessarily something wrong with having allies for a community.
No,
right?
Of course.
And so, like, I'm gay, and I like people who are allies to, and I don't think that only a gay person can tell stories about gay people,
right?
Or for that matter, and so, because especially as our worlds all interact, then I do have stories about growing up and having, for me, having the one black friend. I'm sure his story is very different from his point of view, but I also have a story about, being friends with him.
Absolutely.
So, I don't know.
I think so. Knowing that there's stuff to interrogate about this movie, right? I think the thing that really kind of stood out for me is as rough was the character played by the Bryce Dallas Howard, the Illy or Tilly or Nelly.
Hilly.
What is it?
Hilly, like a hill.
Hilly. Okay. So Hilly stands out as this just absolutely atrocious person, right?
Completely hateful, yes.
And I think there is this tendency of the movie to go, look at what a terrible, terrible person Hilly is. You're not as bad as her, right? And I think there is this sense that, like, oh, well, okay, but all of these white people, including the journalist, Sprocket or whatever her name is.
Skeeter.
Thank you. Are complicit in the system. They were all raised by black maids. Even so, Skeeter, right? She goes and apologizes to the maids afterwards for the people saying racist shit in front of the maids, but she doesn't actually like stop them or push back on it, because then she would be, hurting her position in the community, right? And of course, then so there's that, right? And then there's the scene at the end where Skeeter's like, I've got my job in New York. I'm going to turn it down. And then the Viola Davis character and the Octavia Spencer character come to her and they're like, no, go. It's fine. Right. And they like absolve her of any guilt she might be feeling for like sort of leaving the situation essentially unchanged in Jackson. I felt like we could have dealt without that scene. Right. Because she was always going to leave, right? But for some reason, we felt like we had to make everybody feel better about, she's definitely abandoning these people.
Sure. Yeah, but there's also an element of it, and I gotta push back against some of these, some of this mentality, and like, it's important to tell the stories.
Yeah.
And sometimes the person who can tell a story easiest, best, whatever, or at least especially when it's so important to tell these stories, especially at the early 60s, can be the ally.
Yeah.
And so if she needs to leave in order to be able to...
Yeah, and I guess that's why I was bringing up those scenes in particular, is because I was saying, because I I don't disagree with you about who can tell these stories, right? I'm trying to point those scenes out as like those are the ones specifically that I find are more about comforting the white people watching the movie into saying, oh, I would, if I was in Jackson in 1963, I wouldn't have been like Hilly. I would have been like Skeeter, right?
Do you think that that's how it was? Because I feel like it's probably opposite, where it's telling people that even if you were nice, even if you thought yourself a good person, you were still. This is just how the world was.
Without the scene where they absolve Skeeter, I think it would be more like that, right? I found that scene really, really tough because it did just feel like, okay, now go tell her it's fine and she can go off to New York and ignore all your problems now. And I didn't like that. That's what it felt like to me.
Okay.
But I'm going to give some kudos now because I don't want you to think that I was hating the movie the entire time I was watching it or anything. I will say this movie was a lot like more fearless than I was expecting. Knowing like its reputation, right? It was very unflinching about the not just like verbal assaults, but like the violence that hung over every aspect of these women's lives and made their worlds very small, right? From the Medgar Evers shooting to the way that the men sort of float in and are just menacing all the time. I thought I was not expecting it to be that honest about the way that Jim Crow was backed up by violence, not just state violence, but interpersonal violence. And I thought that was
it's certainly
because it's a PG-13
a story that would have
Disney
been told
movie,
25
right?
years ago.
No, absolutely not. And so I thought it was really, really good at being honest about the entirety of these women's lives. And I thought I thought the stuff about the women not trusting Skeeter at first was very, very honest. That all felt very true.
Yeah, because it was interesting that her little arc there was, at first she was doing it for her. She wasn't really doing it for anybody else, and her, and then she had to learn that it's not for her that these stories need to be told.
Right. Yes. Yeah. And like the Octavia Spencer character insisting that the poop pie story be told, I thought that was really good and really honest and.
Smart too.
Yeah, so there was a lot there that I really, really loved. I just didn't want to like have a conversation as two white guys and just be like, yeah, it was cool, it was fine, it's fine.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting conversation to have, and I think something similar happened when Green Book came out a couple of years ago, and there was a similar kind of backlash. But I don't remember who directed or wrote that, but similarly.
That was, I believe Green Book was based on so that was written by, I believe, the son of the jazz player or something.
Yeah. Well, and there was some controversy because it was told from the perspective of like the white guy's children, I think.
Yeah.
And or based on stories told by him, instead of stories or some sort of recounting of
and I guess I would be more forgiving of that because it really did happen to his dad, and he's recounting the stories told to him as a child. That I think is why that's actually why I asked if this was a real book, and why I referred to it as an alternate history is because it does invent this imaginary person who just happens to be a super good ally, right? And that also feels like
sure, that makes sense.
Sort of a self-insertion, like, hey, you're a Skeeter, not a Hilly, right? And I don't, I would love to think that I'm gonna be on the right side of history, but the fact is, history happens all the time, right? And you do your best in the moment to be on the right side of it, but you never know until the rubber hits the road, right?
Yeah, and you can't, it's very hard to see history from inside it, you know. But so, what do you think of? Let's talk about just more objective criticism of the movie, the acting,
I mean, the acting is obviously phenomenal. They got a incredible cast, and they really knocked it out of the park there. There's nobody that stood out to me as like, oh, this is the weak link or whatever. I thought it was really well paced. Yeah, 2.5 hours, like 2.5 hours is now, as somebody who does not watch a lot of movies, 2.5 hour movie is a long movie, especially when there's no robots punching each other to break it up a little. Right. And please do not assign me movies where robots punch each other, except Pacific Rim. I'm kind of curious about that one. But anyways.
Have you not seen Pacific Rim?
I have not seen Pacific Rim.
It's not one of my favorites.
Oh, okay. Well, then we probably won't watch it. From a technical standpoint, it's fantastic. It looks like a Disney movie. It's all, the period correct costumes and hairstyling are all fantastic. It has a strong sense of place. You're in Jackson, Mississippi the whole time.
Yeah.
It is.
I don't particularly.
Go ahead.
I don't particularly have a sense that it was superbly directed. There's nothing that stands out about the direction, really.
Have you looked up the director at all?
I just did, and it's funny because he directed something else which I thought was fairly interesting. What was it? He directed Get On Up a couple of years after this, which was the James Brown biopic.
Okay.
Starring Chadwick Boseman.
Yeah, and he and Octavia Spencer were roommates for like 7 years.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, they were both PAs on, I can't remember the production now. They were both PAs at the same time. And they lived together for quite some time, and he cast her as a star in another one of his films. He's also from Jackson, Mississippi. So I certainly would not say that they got the wrong white guy to direct this movie, right? I feel like they got if you're going to pick a white guy, this was the guy to pick, right? I think he did
I can see that.
He did do a really good job, I thought.
Yeah, he was fine. He was a former actor, he was in that acting world and kind of went up the ladder just fine.
Would we really say directing is up the ladder from acting?
I think so. Yeah, I mean, certainly. Yeah, in the film world, it certainly is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I liked it. I found myself emotionally moved, and I cried a couple times. Sorry, the dog is playing with this ball, and he's just like, he can't relax until we're done.
So yeah, I liked the movie quite a lot. I would say the criticisms of it are valid, but that doesn't make it not a watchable movie. And I think it's better to watch it and be aware of those things than to watch it and just be like, oh yeah, Skeeter's cool, man.
Sure, yeah. I think it's interesting. Some of my favorite parts, I love these actresses, and so someone like, I love Allison Janney so much.
I knew you were going to say Allison Janney because I'm the same way. And God, it breaks my heart when the scene where she's got the DAR there and she's just horrible to her maid. I just it breaks your heart, man. Really does.
Yeah, and you can see the heartbreak in her too, the conflict in her, and this was probably one of her first movies after West Wing, because West Wing was, I think, probably went through 2008 or so. And so maybe she was doing...
be pretty early. Yeah, this would be pretty early after the end of that. Yeah.
Yeah, but she's just amazing. I found Jessica Chastain to be delightful.
Got to admit, I did not recognize her at all.
Neither did I. And apparently she had to gain weight for that role.
Oh my God.
Which is crazy.
Yeah.
But
she was.
But I loved her character, and she's so she just wants to be friends with everybody, and she's so but she's got this tragedy in her, literally, and but she's trying so hard to be happy and cheerful, and she really wants to find beauty in things like when she shakes the chicken bag, when she's breading the chicken. She just is overcome with how fun it is to shake chicken, and like what a weird little.
I'm not gonna lie, it made me want to make fried chicken.
Yeah, of course it does. Yeah, me too. Maybe you want to eat fried chicken at least.
We have some pretty fantastic fried chicken around here. You should come visit.
Do you really? Who?
Yeah.
Where?
There's a couple of places in Dallas, actually.
Okay,
Dallas
right.
is an up-and-coming diner's paradise, let me tell you. We have some
I had no
fantastic
idea.
restaurants here.
Is that? Are you saying West Allis?
Yeah. Well, I'm saying Stallis, which is how the locals refer to it. West Dallas.
Is it really?
Yeah, Stallis or Dirty Stallis.
Wow, I had no idea. Yeah. I mean, I was not too far out of there for most of my life, and I've never heard that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Oh, I can teach you all the Milwaukee suburb nicknames.
Please don't. For another time.
A very special episode.
I lived in Oak Creek for a little while back in the day.
Nice.
Mm-hmm. So, what would you rate? What would you give this movie?
I would give it a 7. I thought about this. I would give it a 7. Very, very competent, even on the good side. It probably would be an 8 without the controversy, but yeah.
Okay. I'll give it one more point than that myself, I think, having watched it again. This is, I think, the second time I've seen it, and I could see myself watching it again someday.
Yeah. You know what? We need to go back. I've got to rate the Alabama Shakes album.
Oh,
and
yes,
you do. And I would give that an 8. I think it's a fantastic album, really good. So
good, excellent. I love that you like it, and that's not me being like coy or anything. I literally, genuinely like that you like it.
Awesome. All right. So, have you prepared an assignment for me for next time?
I haven't. Before we started recording, I was going to ask you what yours was so that I could start thinking about it, but I did not. So as we have been thus far, I want to kind of base my choice off of what you say.
All right. Well, we'll probably end up doing a little question time again. Although,
okay.
as I think you've determined, if you choose a movie released after about 2005, you'll have a much better chance of hitting one that I haven't seen. But so the band, are you familiar with the Decemberists?
I've heard of them.
All right. So
I might even. I feel like they're big enough that I might even have heard one of their songs.
I'll bet you probably have. So in the early 2000s, indie rock fans were lamenting. Yeah, in the year 2000. We were lamenting the premature death of the indie rock superstars Neutral Milk Hotel, which they had a fantastic album called In the Aeroplane Over the Sea. You'll find it on dozens of best of the 90s lists.
Really?
At or near the top. This was this band that kind of flamed out very quickly. Their sort of leader disappeared into the wild, and they were gone. But they told these really sort of weird, intricate tales, and the Decemberists popped up out in the Pacific Northwest in the early 2000s, and for people who had been missing Neutral Milk Hotel, they really scratched the itch. Decemberists used lots of, really, it's sort of, traditional story rock type of stuff, but a lot of unusual instruments and the storytelling, Travis. I'm really going to encourage you to actually look at lyrics this time, but
okay.
Colin Malloy is the sort of leader of this band, and he writes these every song is a story. Every song is a story. He's kind of obsessed with late late 1800s, early 1900s war, so Herman Melville type things, kind of Victoriana, the spy movies even, like sort of, it's like this, you could just tell that this guy knows how to tie a bow tie. That's
okay.
So I put together a playlist of I think it's 8 or 9 songs from their first 4 albums. Those are the ones that I'm most familiar with. They have continued. They're still together. They've continued to release music. I'm not as into those albums, and so I didn't want to just choose stuff at random from them. But I suspect, like, it's funny because earlier in this episode I said, I'm going to try to introduce you to stuff, and I don't know or care if you're going to like it, but I'm pretty sure you're gonna at least find something to like about this, even if overall you're not a fan.
So let me just make this clear. You're not assigning me the Decemberists. You're assigning something else.
No, I'm definitely assigning. No, I'm definitely assigning you the Decemberists.
Oh, okay. Because but this other band, I was just confused by your whole timeline of these.
I'm trying to tell you, Neutral
honestly,
Milk Hotel.
Matt, so many of your words that you said just seemed like random words you were putting together. Like, what did you just say? The
Neutral Milk Hotel.
Yeah, those are just 3 words, 3 random words.
I want you to know that there is a certain style of hipster who looks much like me with the audience. I want you to know that I'm wearing a beanie right now, heavy horned rim glasses, and a full beard. Okay, so I want you to know that there are people that are listening to this podcast. They can visualize me, and they're like, "Of course, he's a Neutral Milk Hotel fan."
Okay.
Yeah, the Neutral Milk Hotel is like, they're like famous for being underground famous, if that makes sense.
Okay.
But anyways, so the Decemberists, beautiful storytelling. I think you're really going to like it.
Okay, good. All right, brilliant. I think that works, and I like your...
If I had one more comparison.
Oh, yep.
Wes Anderson. They're like a Wes Anderson film come to life.
Oh,
I've seen a bunch of Wes Anderson, so you don't need to assign me a Wes Anderson movie.
Okay.
I'm just saying,
right.
like, that's the vibe, right? Like, weird old clothes and odd juxtapositions, but like storytelling.
Interesting. Okay. Okay. All right. I've got a couple ideas here. Have you seen? And the first thing that pops to mind is Memento. Have you seen Memento?
I have seen Memento.
Okay, and that's Christopher Nolan. Have you seen most of his other things? Have you seen The Prestige?
I hate The Prestige.
Really?
Oh, I hate The Prestige. You know why?
Really?
You know why? Because I hate every single character in it. There is no one to root for in that movie. I hate every single one of them. I hate them.
Oh,
I hate
that
their
is interesting.
I hate them. I hate their wives. I hate everyone in those movies.
Wow. You know what? It's fascinating because I generally don't like movies where there's no one to root for either. But I love The Prestige.
Who do you root for?
I think it's a
David Bowie.
No, I think it's the Hugh Jackman character.
The one who murders a series of his own clones?
Yeah, but he's so but it's tragic in a way.
To be fair, they don't suffer long.
No, he wants so desperately to be good at something, and I get that. Like, I connect with that. Where, like, if I could be the best actor in the world, but I had to kill a clone of myself every time I did a role, I would do that. Okay.
I think I'm going to insert a record scratch and like a tone there.
Yeah, I only brought that up because it was one of my, like, I'm going through my top rated movies on IMDb, and I'm kind of like what are my favorite things, and that's a 9 for me. Now it's not a perfect movie, but it's a nearly perfect movie for me.
It's very well put together and very well acted.
It is. Okay, how about, so let's, speaking of auteurs, young auteurs, did you see Get Out?
I did not.
Okay, that is Jordan Peele's first movie, and I think it's a very interesting follow-up to The Help for you. And so I think that's where we're going to go. It's we're getting into a little, some horror movie stuff here, but...
Yeah, The Help was terrifying.
but I won't. I'm not going to spoil anything because I hope you haven't been spoiled for it.
I know that it's a horror movie, and I know it's about a guess who's coming to dinner scenario. But that's all I know.
Great. So I went into The Help. I went into Get Out completely blind, and I love this experience, by the way, of not having seen movies or knowing what's going on before I go into it. Like I'll watch one trailer, and if I like it, that's all I need. And then sometimes I'll wait to see what critics are saying. Just is it getting good reviews or bad reviews without much in the way of in-depth context. But I went and Get Out that way and ended up loving it. So that's your movie. I don't know where it is to watch. Actually,
it's okay. I can find it.
But we'll find it, and maybe you have to rent it for, $3 or $4 on Amazon or something. But I think that's what we'll do, and yeah, it's interesting. And I have some ideas going forward too as we come into Oscar season here. Where there is one movie this year that I think is probably my favorite movie definitely of the year, and I think it should win Best Picture hands down. But I'm very curious to see how it goes, how it fares, and that movie is Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Oh yeah, I've seen people kind of freaking out about it, but I haven't watched it.
And it is also a very odd movie because everybody I know who saw it in the theater loved it, and I only know a couple of people who've tried to watch it at home, and both of those people said they couldn't sit through it. And I wonder if there is something about being forced to sit and watch the entirety of a movie in order to get all of it, with this movie that makes it unique in some sort of way. Where
Interesting.
Yeah. So,
well, I will say, and this is me. This is not anything that anyone has any control over, but I don't generally like movies where I have to work super hard.
I don't. Yeah. I get that. And let's do Get Out.
Doing Get Out.
And we'll
sure.
move from there. And
I'm just giving you a
there.
heads up. I've told you I don't like horror, and I'm throwing myself headlong into horror, and I loved the horror movie that you had me watch so far. So
Great.
I'll go where you take me.
Right.
Whatever you want to expose me
Get
to.
Out is not horror, by the way. It is a thriller.
Oh,
that's
a thriller. Different.
Yeah. It's not a horror movie. So, but we'll see what you think.
Awesome, and we'll see what you think about the Decemberists. I will drop the link for you.
Excellent.
Yeah, awesome. All right, thanks for exposing yourself to me.
Thanks for exposing yourself to me, and Merry Christmas tomorrow. Only a few hours away from baby Jesus' birthday, and.
Cool. All right, this has been the Exposing Yourselves podcast. I am Matt Runquist.
And I'm Travis Ritchie. Have a wonderful evening. Or day. Or a whole week. It might,
whatever.
maybe it's several days before you hear another podcast from us, or maybe you're binging us one after another. It could be. There's so many ways. It could be.
We're definitely. I'm cutting this out. It's
no. All the different ways. Like just to think about, time has no meaning for the person listening to this podcast and their relationship to us. Isn't that interesting?
That was really philosophical. Thank you. That was really good.
I need some ice cream.
Thanks, everybody. Good night.
All right. Good night.
All right.